So Katya, tell me something about your work. As a working critic, I've been familiar with women artists' work for quite some time, but in the contemporary sense, what's your sense of your position in relation to women artists?
When you say, I'm going to answer with the question a little bit. When you say women artists, what do you mean?
I mean women working as artists in a contemporary realm, whether it's video or whatever medium you're working in.
I mean, I personally don't call myself a woman artist at all. I would like to be an artist. I feel like there's a lot of female artists, you know, always female artist shows. I curate as well, so I often curate artists and I put them in female artist shows. And I do associate myself with a lot of those artists. But at the same time, I look at history and most of my favorite artists are women. I call them my, art mamas. I often, when I'm sort of have an artist block or something's happening, which I can't, I look to their writings, I look to their thoughts. So I feel like that history really kind of pushes me, and I said, well, they can do it, I can do it, because we're also living in a different time. So it's definitely an inspiration. Like, I like to be in lineage. At the same time, I do have an issue when it's a woman artist.
You don't like the genderization.
I don't like to be in the box.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't like to be, oh, you're going to be in this book because it's all women. You're not going to, it feels still kind of its own restriction. It's something that I fight, and I don't know how to actually, to be honest, to fight, or even it's worth.
Well, I think it's an old trope, basically, of being put in a box, as you say. But on the other hand, women are in a particular pickle, so to speak.
Exactly. But at the same time, we have a lot of female artists doing really well.
Well, better than they used to do.
Exactly.
I mean, I look at examples like Deb Cass and other people. I look at auction records, and I see Mike Kelly, 30-something, making gazillions, and I see Deb just barely breaking $15,000, because I follow all this as an art critic.
Yes,
so.
Of course. And that's, I feel, the market. I was actually going to mention the market. I think that's where you really feel the difference.
Yeah.
And that's where the bottom dollar, that really decides your value. And I really, really struggle with the anger. Like, I have rage when I read that, when I see that it's 21st century, 2019, we are in the future. I feel like it's science fiction now. It's 2019, 2020. Why is this still happening?
Yeah,
So
the issues you're bringing up, and I'm sure Juma and other people who are working in the field, like myself, sit there and say, I've been doing this since 1970. Discovering women artists when there was nothing there. Why the hell am I hearing the same things from people from the 1850s on, saying the same questions about women's place, where they just want to be artists, period, and on an even playing field? Any thoughts on that?
I like I like how you went into medias res, into the heart of things. I think when you mentioned the core of the problem is really not necessarily only hierarchies of gender, but hierarchy of capital, and the answer would be always the follow the money and the capital, and all the hierarchies and inequalities. So for me, yes, being a self-proclaimed feminist always meant, to look at how inequality is brought. So to champion women, but to champion all, artists of color, different kind of artists who are who were not privileged by the systems, and a system that hegemonically perpetuates itself. So it's normal, like for us today to say, how is it possible that this is perpetuated from generation to generation with a new set of excuses to make this kind of like a hegemony, as I said, repeats itself. What I think that women are capable of doing now is to have more visibility and to question these things in relation to capital, in relation to, as you said, like to values that are perpetuated by the, by certain, not values, but I would say the different kind of values that are not like, oh, we have these different kind of things, but that implies that one value is more important than other. And that would be the value of money, that would be a value of a hero artist, that would be a value of a macho artist making art that is considered sellable and
valuable
and
in terms of the
right.
society. The problem
Absolutely.
is education. We're dealing here with a canon. We're dealing with art history, which has always privileged white males by and large and set everybody else aside as outliers in this sense. And it continues because of the education.
But also that same education is growing. As an educator, I have to say that I love the opportunity to even ask these questions, as my dear teacher and the mentor started, Linda Nochlin, in 1971, asking, the question of the greatness that is not inherent, but it was, it was
Exactly.
imposed by the dominant structure. So I believe there is so many things to be proud of, being achieved through generations. And again, a new set of imposed rules are there, and how we approach it, how we stay passionate, stay open, stay true to our natures when we are not only in response, not reactive. And I love, I know Katya's work, I'm making this into not like us as creators and, thinkers, and then artists as doers and makers. We're all in this together. But I always remember, how Katya explained to me who she is through her practice, and how important is that, not to be tainted by that kind of reaction to impossibilities. I think that's the common theme that I like in these kind of conversations. We are not talking about frustrations. We are not talking about impossibilities. Look how many, of us are, are struggling, struggling existentially, are struggling in terms of, finding our place as an agency, but we're not allowing this to happen. So I believe that's the key. And when Graciela said, talk about in general, I said yes, why not? Because we don't have to have a specific angle, specific topic, specific kind of niche of
Right,
the answer of feminists. Let's talk about us being us being here and working in arts, and here is what I come up with, and I was thinking about these things, if it's general, what is then, important to me that I would not strip? And I was thinking that it must be some kind of radical notion of equality, not only claiming, yes, of course, we believe in equality, but what kind of equality then I would like to promote, not only, as you said, I always like to say, yes, I curate artists who are not women, because they're not women by their assigned gender, right? Like they are not cisgendered women. But they are also, they can be of different kinds of identifications of their gender, of sexuality, or they can be men and being interested in these issues as well. So we allow that diversity to speak to us. And if I did not bring my work, I brought works of artists that I like now to champion. So I would like us to see one of the videos that I chose, because it's playful. It's not interested in, it's like a kind of new types of narratives being unfolded, and it's about collaboration. These are the postulates of my understanding of not only equality of genders, but opening to others.
Well,
rather-
equality in the field, which is, critics used to be seen as parasites, basically,
Right,
back
but
in the
it's a creative
70s, right?
practice.
Instead of looking at us as people who describe what we see, evaluate it, and put it in a context of our own experience and contemporary experience, and have a serious exchange
So you
with
don't
an
have to be
artist,
defensive.
rather than, oh, I'm going to make you famous and make you
Right,
money
right.
and so on, or I'm going to destroy you.
What would be my poetic platform, not theoretical? And I thought of this lovely Federico Fellini's film from the 1954, La Strada, with a female protagonist, Gelsomina, who is described as naive, as lacking intelligence, lacking the and there is a beautiful kind of exchange when a male character asks this pure kind of child woman who is really coming into her own outside of all the norms. He says, "What are you? You're not a woman. You don't look like a woman. You don't act like a woman. You're like an artichoke." Being an ultimate, I would say, kind of offense of rejection of her femininity. What does it mean a woman is an artichoke? And she does not even understand that he is making fun of him, putting her down, right? Being an artichoke, like being, some kind of vegetable, not even like a flower that smells. And she is like, and so like being put down and being different made her, look at the world as a place where she cannot blossom. And then there is this, the only redemption when there is a fool, who is for me this kind of the crazy one, the clown, who is this this character of the artist, right? And he says to her, everything and everybody has a purpose, a value in this world, even this little rock, this pebble. And she takes the pebble. And I don't see that this is like Fellini teaching, patronizing a woman, telling her this is your value. But, building this scene when the value does not come from the outside, from the patriarchy, from, a critic telling you are an artist. She takes a pebble and look at the pebble and see the world and see the pebble being a pebble and being, being good at feeling good about his existence. Are we the best in what society perpetuates is the best? And the best would be then, what is most expensive,
Well,
or what
the
is like
market
more.
value.
Well,
Again,
yes,
are
the
we-
capitalist
which is the
value,
system.
which is what you're
it's
talking about.
the gaze, it's the patriarchal
Exactly.
validation, it's a
But
stamp.
what is an artist? You're really posing the question
I am asking
using
the question,
Fellini.
like, how can
What's intrinsic?
And you answer
Yeah.
you answer by your practice, and so like
Yeah.
it would be great to hear like how you came into performance, because it's related to personal. Maybe that would be my question to
specifically to performance.
Yeah.
I mean,
not like are you a pebble, or like but how
No,
you
but she's
say-
curious about pebbles. It's the curiosity and the
Yeah.
intrinsic value. If you
Yeah.
pick up something
Yeah.
and you look at it and you look at it differently, then you begin to be stimulated to think about your own ideas and your own curiosity and creativity in that sense. I think
And
of
value.
Martha Rossler's recent show, which is a knockout.
A
at the
knockout.
It's a knockout.
It's like with exclamation point.
Yeah.
Oh, she's wonderful. She's one of my people I look to all the time, and her. What's the video in the kitchen?
Oh, yes. Well, from
Semiotics.
Woman's
Semiotics
House.
of the Kitchen. That
Yeah.
was one of the earliest performance pieces that I ever, and I kind of copied it, in undergrad, in the.
Because it's also fun.
It's
like
fun,
it's not only
but-
angry.
But it's really
response.
contained. There's something about domesticity that a lot of my performance and video work and installation work deals with domesticity, because I grew up rebelling against that constantly.
Yeah.
And I never wanted to be a wife. I'm always against the stereotype of a woman, what that means.
Oh,
so
your role.
my work deals with that a lot. Is like, yeah, the value of being a pebble, of just being. Why are you constraining me in, you have to do this and you have to look a certain way, you have to eat in certain, I mean, it's just been, it's like a journey your whole life as a woman to be constantly battling the gaze. I always feel that, the patriarchal
I
kind
love
of.
how in your work, sorry to interject, can you talk about then, you know, the language that you develop in terms of grotesque, in
Right,
terms of
yes.
carnivalesque, because like it's one thing, you know, I would like to say it's not only us being, as you said, not frustration and anger and response, but you know, this kind of humorous yet very assertive and kind of strong statements then of like of your identity.
Yeah,
How did
and
you come into that? Like,
I actually earlier, I love comedy and I love the comic, the early, you know, Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin, and they were all men. So I always find the women, they were women, of course, but they were much more hidden and less visible.
Well,
and,
Imogene Coco was wonderful comedian early on with a number of other people that we can think of. I mean,
of
the
course,
whole clown.
I mean, I look to, and so I wanted kind of this clownesque, but as a female, and what that means with being grotesque and being absurd, being funny, and still maintaining. A lot of my works, you know, I wear heels, but I can't walk in them, and I break every, you know, I kind of bleeding everywhere. There's this kind of joke, but she's really trying. So there's all my characters try to maintain a certain look, and then they just can't, and they break into absurdity.
Yes,
and I love
your
that
mother saying you have to suffer for beauty, right?
Exactly. And I really go the extra mile of suffering, like wearing 20 million masks. Like I do a lot of masking that is very, very hot underneath, and then performing in that for hours or something like that. And that really makes me, I go through journey every time I perform those characters. So it makes me kind of live through them and experience something else and being completely different, being almost non-gender, non-being, but battling all these things together.
how wonderful is that? Like allowing you, allowing you not to be. That's the cue from Rosler, not to do only autobiography, right? Not only to do like this, but you found a language because you know, like I don't know, like I'm not ready to, you know, to give a recipe of your like half a, you know, part of a comedy, part of like, but then like a little bit of abjectness, but
Of
it's
course,
really not too much. It's like it's also very much about, you know, this kind of playfulness and like as you said, like, you know, turning into absurdity, but like making, not necessarily making people uncomfortable, just kind of like.
Calling into question all of the aspects.
It's questioning.
And you question
And
them.
I have been told they make people uncomfortable.
I'm sure.
And they're mostly men. There's been people who walk out and be like, I've been that made me so uncomfortable. Why? You know, why is that? There are performances that I do in my installation works where with a lot of female artists or performers, where we clean the installation and just take care of it. And really, there's a visibility of taking care for a long time in front of an audience. And I've been told that makes people very uncomfortable.
How do you deal with the reactions from the audience? That's the thing about performance. Do you feel vulnerable to what you evoke in emotion through those performances? You have to be ready.
Yes, there's a process that I've trained myself to go into a particular state and not react whilst I'm in it, but then afterwards to listen and to take on board, and a lot of it I reject, and but I listen. I'm interested always in reaction because that's
Do you
performance.
consider it your material in a sense?
Sometimes. It depends on, I have sometimes participation. I don't always do that with the audience. So
And
I'm
are you
interested.
surprised at times by
Sometimes.
what reactions?
Sometimes I'm so deep in it as any work that it surprises me that, that makes still people uncomfortable. Like, really? You know, it's why? Why? But I'm so maybe far into this and open to things whilst, you know, I'm experimenting.
And does it provoke your curiosity, your assumptions about what and how why would they do that?
Yeah, or why something, I paint as well a lot, and a lot of my work, paintings reflect my performance work, so there's this abject body, female, gender, kind of mixed. And a lot of them, also people look at them and just kind of, I wouldn't put that on my wall. It's just makes me, I'm sort of just like, oh, I want to sweat, you know.
Yeah, well, like Cindy Sherman and some of the more grotesque pieces that
But I
she
think-
shoves in your face.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm much
with
more.
you know, how
Yeah.
can you vouch for that friction that you had in performance afterwards?
I like to play with this attraction and then, you know,
Repulsion.
Repulsion. It really, it's very interesting to me, and I make a lot of sculptural, more and more larger scale sculpture work. And yes, I really am interested in really finding that in a stable form, how to access what I do in performance in mediums that are, you know, sitting
Well,
there.
that's Fellini again,
That's
as you
kind of-
mentioned. Serafina on the Beach, one of the most grotesque performances I've ever seen in my life, and yet intriguing. She's absolutely fascinating in her eroticism, which is another no-no for women too, because between
Yes.
seduction and eroticism comes the whole patriarchal imposition of, oh, women are so powerful sexually, they have so much more power than we men, but you are the ones who do it. It's not us. We like to be ourselves, but you misconstrue it as something else instead of saying, oh, what are you doing? What do you mean?
Yes, it's interesting, sexuality. I mean, I use it a lot in the work, and kind of more abject sexuality, and sort of go far sometimes. And yes, it's always, oh, that's not attractive, or I don't want to see that, or something. And I'm like, well, it's not, you know.
Yeah, attractive by whom?
Exactly.
Or like
I
what
question that.
values?
Who is looking, and what does that even mean? I'm not working to be attractive for anyone. This is work. This is my art. This is expression and you know, experimentation, communication of being in the world rather than being pleasing to someone. So I really definitely, I'm curious about this. What does that mean? Who is looking? Or that gaze, you know, that's very heavy on women, so from birth to death, like what is, and it's never, we don't win if you're too young, too old, too this, too that. I mean, I've been through it my whole life, and I'm an only child, a female child, so I get it a lot from my family.
No, my approach is very unique, I think, and eclectic, having started in the late 60s and in uncharted territory. You mentioned Linda, who's a friend of mine, and Anne. Actually, they got me involved in starting the first chapter of a women's caucus in Florida at that time, because I was an outsider, basically, and working on diversity issues, which was fundamental at that time with Faith Ringgold and so on. So my practice essentially devolves out of Chinese art, Japanese art before we even began with criticism, and then instituting courses in criticism, not just feminist art criticism, although we did a lot of work, Arlene Raven and myself and Joanna, 3 books and assorted exhibitions and so on, establishing the groundwork of it. But from there, it's what interests me, what I'm curious about, whether it's done by men, women, chimpanzees. I mean, it really gets down to what you're talking about in the openness of the field, which I called in my essay prismatic criticism, which is like one of those twirling balls in a ballroom where it depends where the light is reflected as to what you're going to focus on or concentrate on in describing, evaluating, and putting it in a contemporary context. So that's mainly how I do criticism. I don't have any kind of canon that I apply in that sense. And I think Linda opened up all of that in talking about women's art and why there aren't any great women artists and things of that nature.
Do you think there's art criticism has changed a lot?
Oh, tremendously.
Yeah.
Tremendously. And I think feminist art criticism has had a big impact, particularly on men who are feminists, actually. There are some, and I hope there'll be more in the future, because to be open in this way to a non-rigid notion of what human beings can be in their masculinities, femininities, and everything in between is really important. And I think the GLBTQ, I can't keep up with the initials, basically have opened this up tremendously over the last, 20, 30 years or so, where we don't have to be, male, female,
Yes,
with a
yes.
set of roles and a set of tasks, but where we can be who we are as individuals, whatever that may be.
I really love to hear, from your generation to kind of that we are building. It's a life's project, like to what you believe that you practice, and it's also a
It's
privilege,
evolving
in my case,
constantly.
in teaching art history, but also working with artists and seeing, that there are things to be done and things are moving, even like
Well, the
like glacially.
globalization has made a huge difference. Look at the two of you. I mean, in bringing all of this into the complete picture of different cultures and different enrichment and a different perspective of looking at things creates a whole new vanguard in that way.
We hope so.
Well, I hope.
Yes,
I'm always
exactly.
optimistic.
But it's I don't know. I'm optimistic now. I think after the swearing in of all the women in Congress, I don't know. It feels something.
Yeah, something.
Something.
And
We
to
hope.
be able to make art and to have people to look at art. I think that we did not talk. I really didn't want to impose on your work, but this carnivalesque in your work, it's so life-giving. It's so much the opposite of this kind of reaction, to whatever imposed patriarchal values. But it's really, it's really about, pleasure and different kinds of pleasures.
Yeah, I was gonna say pleasure.
So like this,
Definitely.
power of laughter to unhinge.
Yes.
And to kind of allow different, the kind of settings and registers of pleasure that are not only normative, and that non-normativity is wonderful thing, and
Yeah.
that's that's what I liked in your work, and it's so great that this episode will like have this this like kind of life affirming kind of tone to it. So it's like a kind of celebration.
Well, the critique is also interesting from the point of view of parody. When you make fun of
Yes.
people, it's great